Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Welcome to Demetria Reads, where I have fun putting my voice to the written word to entertain you, inform you, and empower you. My name is Demetria Bridges, and I'm a Beantown girl who loves the power of her blueprint sound. And on this podcast, I narrate blogs, articles, poems, novel excerpts, anything that arrests my attention and moves me to pull out my vocal palette and start to paint. I'd love for you to subscribe, write a review, and of course, spread the word. Okay, let's get to today's inspiration. One of the greatest and rewarding and equally challenging relationships that one could ever have is that between a parent and a child, specifically between mothers and daughters. When I think of mothers and daughters, I think of two people, two individuals with a mirror in between them. And on the one hand, the little girl looks at her mother through the mirror and sees a reflection of what should be. Now, whether she accepts that or not is up to her as she grows up, but she has this definition of what womanhood is by looking at her mother. Her mother is her first example of that. Conversely, the mother looks at her daughter through the mirror of trying to make her daughter what she wasn't, not necessarily living vicariously through her, but trying to make sure that she doesn't fall into the pit, making sure she doesn't make the mistakes that the mom makes. But how those things are carried out, how they are executed, that's the gray area. That's the wonderful area of growth. And it's always interesting and wonderful, I think, this dynamic of mothers and daughters that is so powerfully expressed here in this story by Bolden. It's called A Loose Woman, and I really hope you enjoy it. A Loose Woman by Bolden. I didn't want you to grow up to be a loose woman, my mother said not long before she died. But I see I have failed miserably. She was methodically stacking her books, history over here, psychology up there, romance in that basket. The sound of the hardcovers sliding against each other was soothing. I sat down on the floor to help. I handed her a poetry collection by Gwendolyn Brooks. Poetry or Black history? I asked. You love Brooks, she said. You keep it. Without opening the book, I took a deep breath and launched into my favorite Brooks poem. I've been in the front yard all my life. I want to peek at the back, where it's rough and unintended, and hungry weed grows. A girl gets sick of a rose. Despite herself, Mother began to smile. I should never have let you read so much. That was my mistake. My mother, she tells me that Johnny May will grow up to be a bad woman, that George will be taken to jail soon or late. On account of last winter, he sold our back gate. But I say it's fine, honest I do, and I'd like to be a bad woman too. My daughter toddled over and plopped down on the pile, a child of divorce, thanks to me. Further proof of my loose morals, if my wild teenage years and my clubbing 20s hadn't been proof enough. Story, 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 she chanted, her chubby little arms scooping up Freud and Angelou and Steele. I have a little shadow, my mother sang. Go in, go out with me, my daughter giggled. And what can be the use of him? My mother tickled her cheeks. More I see, more I see. She tumbled into Mother's lap, clapping. They carried on, mauling Robert Louis Stevenson's classic poem, passing down the love of words from one woman child to another. Another little girl learning to see the world as an exciting, magical place. Another woman who would live her life unafraid. Another woman on the loose. Mother shielded my virginity as best she could in the 70s, as the bra burners, pro-choice marchers, and birth control pill devotees were rushing the world stage. A girl in our neighborhood got pregnant, and I was forbidden to speak to her again. Mother caught me sneaking over to her house and grounded me for a week. Do you want everyone to think you're a slut too? She demanded. I was barricaded in my room, in mortal fear of missing the entire sexual revolution. But the barricade was made of books, and the revolution found its way to me just the same. She was relentless about vetting my friends, phone calls, and social activities, and completely unconcerned about what I read. Once, when I was 12, the Book of the Month Club selection arrived early, and I got to it first. Everything you always wanted to know about sex, but were afraid to ask. My mother got home from work and saw me reading it. I could see the struggle on her face, the horror of the subject matter measured against her worship of books and knowledge. Books won. I kept reading. "There's a lot of stuff in there you're not going to understand," she said finally. She was right, of course. I took copious notes. My mother hugged my daughter after dinner, and we headed home. "I'm not going to let you grow up to be a loose woman," she said emphatically. She didn't know, of course, that her shortness of breath at 2 a.m. was a cardiac event. She didn't know she was pale and confused and scaring the hell out of my father. She didn't know she was dying. So how could I? Her last words to me, just as the ambulance pulled up, were, "This is so silly." A few days after the funeral, I sat in her reading chair and eyed the stacks of still unsorted stories. I lifted them one by one and dusted the spines with a soft, clean cloth, far gentler with her books than I ever was with her. I hope you enjoyed today's selection, and I hope to read to you again. I'll be reading a few times a week and would love to hear your thoughts. So leave your blueprint sound via a review, and I'll catch up with you next time on Demetria Reads.